Thank you, gracious audience. Happy Halloween. It's October here with RobLive, and we're back in studio. Jim, lovely job you've done back here with the coffin.
Thank you. Can't wait to show it off.
Well, we're going to address that in a minute because I know that all our guests from here on out are going to be like, where did they get a coffin and was it used? Did you dig that up?
Well, let me show them. If I show them, they're going to see the guest. You want to introduce the guest first?
Oh, not yet. Yeah. No, we got to get to the guest. Sorry. I'm
It's revealing too much.
I'm sorry, producer. Producer Jim,
Yep.
Always on the job.
I got you.
RobLive, we're back and in studio. And our next guest is someone that I've known for a while through circles of friends, but just been very impressed with his journey and watched him just come along. And now he's become a big part of my life because we work together. But I want to bring to studio now Dr. Rosa, Dr. Victor Rosa.
Just Victor, please.
Victor, okay. Well, how's the doctor thing? Does that? Because I always try to honor people with that because it's a lot of work. And I've had people say, please call me doctor.
I've had people correct me too, which is why I don't do that. I just students. That's the only thing I ever expect out of students. But everyone else, we're colleagues. I don't ever
Just
have
Victor.
Just Victor.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Like him already. You see that humility, Jim. So Victor. So the way this happened was I had heard through some friends that you gave a very heartfelt speech about your journey. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, I wonder if we could get him on the show to share some of that. Because if I know I've told you a little bit about the show, but essentially what we're trying to do is get people to tune in who are going through it, who may be questioning themselves, who may be at a stage in their life where they're like, I don't know if I can get through this. And then be able to hear somebody's interview and go, you know what? Victor made it, so can I.
Okay.
And so I feel like you have a great, yes, I can journey. And so I want to start from the beginning, as I always do. And me and Jim still have debates about this. He's like, dude, just get to the right. I said, no, you gotta build it.
Well, you haven't asked him where he's from, where he's born, all that good stuff. That's where we always go.
We're gonna go there. So born and raised in Hanford. Is that correct?
Actually born in Massachusetts, in
Oh,
Salem, Massachusetts.
that's right.
It's fitting with the theme.
Salem, Massachusetts.
Right, I was literally born 2 blocks away from where the Salem Witch Trials happened.
Oh,
so,
my.
Yeah.
Now, are there like statues to commemorate that?
There's the Salem Witch House, and it's a little cheesy, but it's.
I
good,
just think it's funny. Like, hey, we drowned a bunch of witches, and we're celebrating it now. Here's some statues.
Hey, the town's got to make money off of something. But.
It's on my bucket list. We're gonna go.
Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually not
That's
to correct you,
Jerusalem,
but
right?
That's Jerusalem's lot in Maine, but still.
That's Maine, of
That's
course.
Maine, yeah.
Stephen King. Everything happens in Maine.
I just watched that movie last night.
The new one?
Yeah, it's on HBO.
What'd you think?
Yeah, it was okay. It wasn't that bad. I mean,
Hey, HBO, we're plugging you.
yeah.
Did you watch it?
I did. I liked the original better. It wasn't.
Oh,
it was,
yeah.
It was okay.
Yeah,
It
you're
was
right.
okay.
Because
Yeah,
this
it
one
was.
took place in
Yeah.
the 70s. The original was what?
Yeah, it would have been, I think, like 77, 78, something like that.
Yeah. Yes, it was. It was 78, and then this one was just recently released.
And it still takes place in the 70s. It's
still-
still,
okay.
It's, yeah.
If you watch them side by side, they're almost exactly.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna check out the old one. It's been a while. The only thing I remember from the old one is that scene where the little boy's tapping on the window, but there's no second floor. He's floating. Hey, come open the door. Can you open the window?
No spoilers. No spoilers.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
No
Oh,
spoilers.
man.
that may or may
it
not
may-
have happened.
yeah, it might
Tune
be the
in.
same. It might be the same. We don't know.
So born in
Yeah,
Massachusetts,
I was just 2 years old.
and the family said we're up and going to Hanford.
Yeah, my entire family were all immigrants from Portugal, from the Azores
Portugal.
Islands. And
Okay,
and so-
those islands, man.
yeah, every Portuguese in all of Kings County is
Okay,
pretty
so I'm
much
gonna-
from the islands. So.
I'm gonna run some kind stereotypes, and then you just
Sure,
agree or
sure.
disagree. Does your family or did you at any time own a white pickup truck?
Yes.
See, that's my ready joke. I don't know if John noticed that. John, his husband's off camera here, so John, just nod if you've seen the white trucks, right? I thought, is this a cult? Like, what's going on here? Like, I remember pulling up to like Hanford events or Kings County events when I first moved there about 10 years ago, and there'd be like 50% white trucks, and I'd be like, am I missing something? What's going on?
I actually joke about it's the white truck rule.
Oh,
because in essence, if I grew up in the ag industry and that sort of on a farm and all of that.
So you grew up on a farm?
I did. And so that whole white truck rule is basically if you just blend in, you're just you're not going to be the guy who has the red truck or the bright blue truck. It's an ag thing. It's a white truck. Yeah.
Well, I also heard, and I don't know this to be the reason, but I know that overall, in general, white cars tend to be better priced vehicles.
Oh.
Have you heard that one? If you buy the white version of a car compared to the red or the black, it's the price is cheaper for some reason. I don't know if the paint's cheaper. I don't know.
I know refrigerators are now.
white fridge versus stainless steel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you move over to you were 2 years old.
I was only 2, but when my family immigrated to the East Coast, they had never seen snow. They were on islands and that sort of thing, and moved to Massachusetts of all places.
So that's a bold move in itself.
Well, totally. I mean, I look at my parents, some of the bravest people in their 30s with 5 kids already, not knowing what they were walking into, just said, "Hey, there's got to be something better." And got sponsored and came over, and both worked in a Sylvania light factory. And back then there was a big anti-immigrant thing back then too, and so factory work stuff. So went through all of those types of things, but they lasted, close to 8 years back on the East Coast, and then just needed something that climate-wise was a little bit better. They wanted their farmland
compared to the island.
And so they found the Valley, and they knew a lot of people had been going from the East Coast to the Valley. There was that first wave of immigrants that came to the Valley, and so they followed.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I find this, and this is just my experience, right? So I don't, everyone has their own lens. That the Portuguese residents of Kings County that I've met, a lot of them tend to be business owners, farmer versus farm worker, right? There's almost like this ingrained sense of, hey, we need to go to the next step if we can, rather than just, not just, but if I can go from a position of working for someone to having my own business. And I'll give my example. I had a gardener, a landscaper, and he came and he was coming around Lemoore and asking for business. And his English was very minimal. And I talked to him like he's been here maybe a year, 2 years from is it pronounced the Azores?
Azores, yeah.
Yeah, he was from the Azores. Been here maybe a year and a half. The language barrier did not scare him at all. He was like, hey, I'm going to run my own business. And I just watched it grow over the last 3 years. And I thought he could have easily come here, and because of the language barrier and the intimidation and acclimating to a new society, probably some culture shock, just kind of stay under the radar and work for somebody else and have it a lot easier. But no, he's the business owner. He's trying to communicate to people in English, doing his best, and works for himself. Is that something that you feel was like?
I do. I think it's very common, actually, in the Portuguese culture. I'll use my dad as an example. They came over and were doing factory work, and my dad's like, there's no forward movement on this. I'm not going to be a mechanic in a light bulb factory for the rest of my life. So came to the Valley, literally started going to construction sites and just kind of camping out and watching what the guys were doing. And, meanwhile, we had a small farm, and so he started buying cows and animals and all the different things to kind of be a sustainable farmer. But was just keeping an eye, and actually even to some point volunteering just to carry stuff and do stuff so he could learn the construction trade. And within a year, he started doing his own construction work. He became a carpenter. And that became his business, and working for a lot of Portuguese families, remodeling homes, working on a lot of dairy homes and that sort of thing, and still farming on the side, all of those sort of things.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's
work ethic. That's the other one.
Yeah,
work ethic.
The flip side of all that is, my uncles opened pizza parlors here because on the East Coast they had
oh, really?
Pizza, and so Boston House of Pizza.
Oh yeah, Boston House of Pizza.
That's my cousin and my uncle.
Is that the Lemoore location or Hanford?
It was Hanford and Lemoore.
Okay.
And my dad had worked, helped build some of those, the interiors and
really
the
cool
remodels and stuff. So at one point, because all my brothers and sisters had including myself, all worked Boston Pizza.
Oh, did you? Did you do the square cuts?
I did all of it.
Are you instructed to do that? Is that like part of the?
Oh yeah.
You have to cut it in squares.
It is a square. Yeah. But I think the biggest thing was this, slicing those for those steak sandwiches. My job was literally on a meat slicer, slicing steak for those steak sandwiches for my entire 8-hour shift.
Oh, okay.
Manual one. I mean, it wasn't.
So you had the forearms of a baseball
one
player.
side, one side. But it was a great gig, and my dad then said, "Hey, let's open our own." And so,
See, that's what I'm saying. Just entrepreneurial spirit.
100%. And so we went to a neighboring community to Selma. Didn't want to compete against my uncle and cousin, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So built Rosa's and then ran that for 30 years. And
Wait,
so it's just
Rosa's?
in Selma, Rosa's Pizza,
Is it still there?
still there.
I'm going to have to try it.
My brother has sold it since to
Did they keep the secret sauce?
They
Like
pretty much kept it the same. They're trying a few new things, but I've heard it's still good. So
Rosa's Pizza.
Yeah.
Shout out to Selma. Wow. Okay. And so that's the part that really impresses me, because when you try something new, right, there's all these seeds of doubt and all these questions about what I may or may not be able to do.
Mhm.
And when I look at this entrepreneurial Portuguese spirit that I've witnessed in Kings County, it's like, hey, we won't know unless we try.
Right.
And that level of courage is it's inspiring.
And amazing life lessons for me and my siblings.
Let's go
of
for
being self-sufficient and resilient and make things happen. Don't blame anybody else for your failures or shortcomings or anything like that. If you want to make something happen, make it happen for yourself. And my dad preached that. My mom forced that. And in reality, it served us all well. I have all of my siblings are successful and doing great. And so
The 5
I'm
of
really
you
proud.
total?
6 of us total. I'm the baby. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Oh, you're the baby.
I'm the baby. Yeah.
Wow. Jim, can we get a DJ horn shout out to the Rosa parents? Shout out Rosa parents. What were their name?
It was Manuel and Rosalina.
Manuel and Rosalina.
Yeah.
Big shout out. Raising some great children. So now at some point, well, let's go back to high school now. What kind of high school student were you?
I'm going to jump back a little bit farther. I went to Lakeside School.
Oh, wait, that was the other one.
Yeah,
Lakeside.
let me jump into elementary, because I went to a very, very small Southside Hanford school.
I know Lakeside well now.
Yeah.
My daughter goes to Jefferson.
Okay.
And we look at Lakeside, it reminds me of I went to Kings River Elementary, which is, again, a country school, different population.
Yeah. We, and I started kindergarten there, but had very limited English. I grew up in a Portuguese household. We only spoke Portuguese in the house.
Right.
And so
was it ESL at the time? Was that the label, or EL?
It was. Believe it or not, at that point there were as many Portuguese-speaking kids as there were Hispanic-speaking kids,
Really?
or Spanish-speaking kids in that school. But it was a small class. I had like 30 kids in my entire class.
Yeah.
So
It's still a small school.
It is very small, and as you know, it has a bad reputation. But it was a fantastic school for me. I mean, they were old school teachers that were strict grammarians, and really like, it's not okay for you to have this accent, Victor. We're gonna work that out of you, type of thing. It's not like it is today, where we want to embrace all things. At that point, it was like, no, you're going to be an American. You're going to sound like an American, and they worked it all through. But I always tell the story. In fact, you probably remember it because I told it on the first day I started the job as superintendent.
Yeah.
I got to kindergarten and was basically placed next to a girl who spoke Portuguese, so she could help me translate, And the reality of all that is, I was just a kid. I sat where they told me to sit and did what I was supposed to do. But there were these shapes above each little group, so that we were a table of 6. There were other tables of 6, all throughout, and there was the circles and the squares and the triangles, little shape hanging above it.
Yeah.
That was the group, And mine was the diamond group, and you think,
Fitting.
okay, we're learning our shapes, Well, as I progressed and got older, and in fact, my first substitute job that I ever worked was in that kindergarten classroom with the same teacher's aide for the teacher that had been my kindergarten teacher.
How's that for a sign?
It was
You're
pretty
right where you
cool.
belong.
It was pretty cool, except literally I go in and the first thing I do is this little girl's just bawling because she sees somebody different and she's terrified, and I get down to her level and she doesn't speak any English, she's speaking Spanish, and I start speaking to her in Spanish. And she just launches cereal. She just vomits all over me.
That's not what I was expecting.
That was day one of my first teaching gig.
Man.
And I was like, okay, I have my gym shirt in the car, so I went and did that. Anyway, I look at Lakeside as such a tremendous experience, and I look at that experience of being in those groups and learning later what it meant to be in those groups the Diamond kids were the advanced readers. They were the advanced math. They were just farther ahead. I had zero business being in the Diamond group. I was not advanced in any way. I happened to have someone who could translate for me. And then, you start getting into 3rd and 4th grade. I just continued in this advanced reading group, all the way through.
Yeah.
I'm still having to take, I think it might have been the CELT back then. It's the LPAC now, but basically the exam you have to take to get designated as a full English speaker. Taking that test all along, get into high school. I'm in college prep classes. I'm eventually in AP classes.
Wow.
And it was that same group that went through. Meanwhile, I'm looking at the kids that were in the square group and the triangle group. They stayed in the lower group all the way through. It's like, what was different? And I know what's different. The expectation was different. I rose to the occasion of what my expectations were, and those kids rose to the expectation of what was expected of them. And as I started, working towards becoming an educator, that resonated so profoundly for me. Like, do not do that to kids. Do not make that happen for kids. Give them every opportunity, have the high expectation, and let them rise to the occasion, especially in those young grades. Kids just want to make you happy. They just want to please.
Yeah.
And so
It's expected.
And give them the support to get to that expectation. But that became my philosophy throughout my entire educational career from that kindergarten experience.
I love that. It reminds me of I don't know, Jim, if I shared this yet with you, but I have this Janet Jackson story that I share with my students, which is that Janet Jackson was born into a family where from the day she came in diapers, her brothers were world famous performers on stage. That became the norm in her family. And so as she's growing up and they're like, hey, Janet, do you want to be on stage? And she's like, well, yeah, Tito can do it. I can, you know what I mean? And it became the expectation from Joe Jackson, for better or worse,
Right.
that she was going to be a successful performer. And at one point she was the highest selling female artist in the history of music.
Wow.
And I don't think it's any coincidence that happened. It's just you were put in the Diamond group, and so the expectation was there. Janet was born into a family of performers, and so the expectation was there for her. And it was like, yeah, of course we're on stage. That's what we do.
It's just what we do.
It's just what we do.
Absolutely.
And so that's an amazing story.
Thank you.
So then you get through 8th grade. You're in high school. You're a bullpup.
I'm a bullpup. At that point, there was only, there's 2 campuses, but only one school.
Yes.
And so I started out at the West Campus for freshman, sophomore year. And I was just a very normal, wasn't a shining star, wasn't not a shining star. I was very middle of the road kid. I got decent grades freshman, sophomore year.
Extracurriculars, sports, anything?
Nothing. I and growing up
You were working
on a
at
farm,
the pizza place.
I was working. I literally started working my freshman year.
Yeah.
I had a lot of chores back at home as far as farm
So did you have to
stuff goes.
feed the animals before school type of thing? Like
We
FFA?
fed, we milked, we did all.
Oh,
I'm going to share a story that I don't think I've ever shared with anybody.
Ooh, an exclusive.
One of my chores, and I think only a Portuguese or Hispanic person would ever understand the level of chores you have when you grow up. And, we were a very poor family. My dad did okay.
Yeah.
And, but in hindsight, we were, definitely poor, you
Yeah.
know. And we're in a 3-bedroom house with a lot more than that number of people living. I had my siblings. I had my grandmother living with us. We sometimes had
Never had your own room.
cousin. Never. No,
I talk about that in my
oh
class.
my God, this is embarrassing. I literally slept in my parents' room in a crib until I was in first grade.
What?
First grade.
Wow.
I'm like, I think I was birth control for them to not have more than 6. But, people make a joke about that. It's like, well, were you scared? It's like, no, I wasn't scared. There was nowhere else to go. My grandmother shared a room with my next 2 brothers. My sisters shared a room. My other, everybody had a space. And we had relatives from Portugal come stay with us. We would sometimes, cousins that are trying to get off their feet, and they would live with us. So there's a lot of people in this house that's, again, made for a small family.
Okay, so I just want to pause for a second because one of my pet peeves, and you see families do that a lot nowadays, is like you have a 5-bedroom home, right? And each kid has their own bedroom, and then company comes to stay, and then everybody goes, oh, where are we going to put them?
Right.
I know. What are you talking about? Like we grew up.
It's in
You were going to sleep in that room.
I look at it now. I mean, I certainly didn't necessarily feel like I came from a place of privilege, but I sure have privilege now because I have plenty of rooms in my house now. I work towards it. But at that time, when you had that many people, my dad would be the guy, like, you got 2 minutes in the shower. 2 minutes, that's it. or is there going to be too much water into the sewer system?
Yeah.
You know, or septic
Oh, so you had a
system.
septic tank.
You know.
Yeah.
So if you were last in line, now all of a sudden the tub's just barely draining down, you know, sort of thing. My dad, in all of his ingenuity, is like, we're going to fix this. And so he digs this. Well, the first thing he did was say, we're going to build a pool. Let's start digging a hole. That was his way of convincing us all to dig this gigantic hole in the backyard.
And you thought it was going to be a swimming
We
pool?
thought it was going to be a pool. Okay.
That's
I think
clever.
at the time, you know, it ended up being what he really wanted was a shop, and he wanted to put his wine cellar because my dad made wine too, and you know, we grew grapes.
What did
and
Dad not do?
Oh, he did all of it. He was the quintessential
Is he still
Portuguese.
with us?
He passed away a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And in that, you know, what turned into that, then there was a very slow year in construction, and then there was no money to do it. So my dad said, time to fill the hole. Well, you start filling it with everything you can find, you know, and he attaches it to the leach lines so that now it's basically, you know, the sewer water is going from the tank and then leaching into this hole. And it's covered up and slowly kind of, well, that only lasted for a little while. And then my dad literally opened up a hole next to it. And this was my chore. And half people never believe me. I'd come home from school and there was a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket that I would lower into the hole. And he rigged this tank, you know, that had irrigation pipes that went all the way out to, you know, but to one of the acres out in the field. And I'd pour the bucket. Every day. Every day. That's what my brothers and sisters would. And, you know, how do you tell your friends? It's like friends would, you know, hey, why don't I come stay over? No, no, it's cool. Why don't we stay at your house? You know, type of thing. But it's yeah, I mean, that's life. But anyway, I say all that. Growing up on a farm and doing all those things, I didn't have the opportunity to do the typical high school things.
Yeah.
People always say, well, why weren't you an FFA? I don't get it. You were an ag kid all the way. You were raising animals. You were selling
You were
them
doing
at
the real
stockyard.
farm.
I said, my dad's like, you're not doing that. You know, that's not for us.
That's
you know?
practice.
And that whole thing of like, that's for those kids. It's not for people like us. And you're not spending money on a jacket. And you have to ride the bus. I can't go pick you up for these sort of things after school.
Yeah.
And again, another layer that's really pushed me in my philosophy of destigmatizing those things so that people understand there's no us. If I want to do that, I can do that. You know, I don't have to pay for anything. I don't have. Of course, when I was in school, yes, you did have to pay for certain things, whether we were supposed to or not. We did. In today's world, if a kid wants to do it, they want to do it. But there's still that view of, yeah, that's for that type of kid. That's not for me. I can't. I'm not doing football. That's not for me. Or bands. I want to be a musician, but I'm not doing band because that's not for me. And I hate that part of it. That's the time you should be exploring and doing all kinds of things. And we find, especially with our Hispanic students, they separate out, or the parent is separating them out. And that was my high school experience, and went all the way through. One thing happened in my junior year that was not good for me as a student, and that's I got a car. When you work a lot, you make money, and I had the money to buy a car in my.
What was your first car?
Year. Well, I wanted it to be a Suzuki Sidekick. Okay, that's what a Suzuki Samurai or a Suzuki Sidekick.
Nice.
And I had saved like $11,000. I had enough. I had enough to practically pay for that Sidekick. I get home one day, and there's a red little sedan in the driveway, and it was a Renault. A Renault.
I think my mom had that.
Renault Alliance.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell is that? And my dad's like, well, you know, Anthony Carvalho had this great car for sale. It has really good air conditioning. So I took money out of your bank account and I bought it. And I'm like, what? What? I'm like, I'm not driving this to school. Anyway, I drove it for 3 months, and I complained and complained and complained. And he only spent like $3,000 of the money on it. But I complained and complained. He goes, that's it. We're going to the Suzuki dealership. Shut your mouth. Let's go do it.
You got the Suzuki
and I got the Suzuki side. I think I'm the only junior in high school. I had 2 cars for a little while.
Wow. What color did you get?
I like it. I got a black Suzuki Sidekick.
Nice.
And so, anyway,
those are drop top, right? Like
it was a piece of crap. I mean, it was a total piece of crap. But I thought I was styling it and loved it. But the minute I got that car, as strict as my parents were on work ethic and getting all these things done, they truly meant work ethic. That didn't necessarily translate to work ethic with your homework in school. So my dad was perfectly fine with don't go to school today because we're going to go roof a house.
Yeah.
And that happened often. Well, as soon as I had a car, it's like, well, school's back burner. And, Hanford High at that time, or the district, had a policy, if you missed 18 days of school with the 90% rule that you failed all your courses. It didn't matter if you had straight A's.
Wow.
And I did. I had A's and B's, but I went over that 18, day threshold.
Yeah.
So I got straight F's for a semester, and then I wasn't on track to graduate anymore. And I was like, I'm dropping out. This is BS. I'm dropping out. I tried everything in my power to actually drop out, and my counselor, Mrs. Steffen, who's a friend of mine to this day, and she's like, no, you're not. I mean, just really was like, that's not happening. You're not dropping out. We're going to put you on independent study. You're going to make up these classes, and you're going to do all these things. And by senior year, I was back on track and was able to do what I needed to graduate. But I was about to become the statistic. I was about to become the kid who worked hard, did all
you went through all of it?
All of the things. And so it's interesting when I got the job and I was speaking to all of you guys on my first day. 6 years ago now.
Yeah.
I love all my teachers. So many of my teachers that were still here, and I said, and there's Miss Lopes, even though I failed her class, I still love her. And she's like, there's no way you failed my class. You didn't fail my class. And she went back to look. She goes, oh yeah, you did fail my class.
She looked back.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so again,
in her written grade book, no Aries.
Oh, of course. But yeah, I had a great high school experience. I had good friends. I was in that kind of mid-nerd type of thing,
Okay.
just friends with everybody.
Yeah.
Didn't, never had any bad experiences.
Did anyone ever make it over the house through sleepover?
I had one friend. He was my best friend throughout elementary school. His name was Aaron Yoakum. And he's the only person who ever stayed.
He saw behind the curtain.
And what's funny is, of all the things, he didn't see the literal crap show where I'm having to shovel crap, but he did experience a matancia, which I don't know if you know what that means,
Matancia.
but it's basically where we would slaughter a pig.
Oh,
So we would.
he was there that night.
He was there the night that it was all the family would come over. We would slaughter 2 pigs, you'd clean them out, you'd make linguiça, you do all those sort of things. Well, you have to age the meat overnight before you cut it. And so this is one of my favorites. We're sitting there, we have one TV in the corner, we're trying to watch Three's Company or Happy Days or whatever the heck it is. And my dad had rigged these hooks in the living room.
That's where you guys hung
Where
the
the
pig.
pig is hanging by its snout and bamboo is spreading the arms apart, and this hoof would shift in front of the TV a little bit, and you're kind of doing your watch.
This is unreal.
And I'm like, I'm just looking, I'm like, I'm so embarrassed. He goes, no, we kill pigs too. He goes, just not like this.
we don't dry them out in the living room.
No, we don't. A little pan underneath to catch any drippings.
Is there a reason why it was in the house? Like,
well, flies outside. You can't
in the garage,
no garage. You grew up like I did. That garage was converted into a room on day
Somebody
one. Somebody was sleeping in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, are you still friends with Mr. Yoakum?
We were great friends. Unfortunately, he passed away. Gosh, it's going over 10 years ago now.
Nice.
Just a great guy, but had some of his own demons, and
Yeah.
But fantastic friend, and one of my best elementary memories, and really, I'm almost going to say like a high school protector, because he was the football star and, and friends with everybody. He was all the things that I wasn't, he really was, but we remained close as friends somewhat from a distance.
What was the
once we were in
bond?
high school. Elementary. I think just going through life. I went through what I was going through. He was going through all the things that I would think are privilege, but not really. Divorce, all of those things that happen regardless of your class or social status and that sort of thing. He had all those experiences too, and we went through them together, and it was kind of that bond forever. Even though we were a little distant in high school, there was just always that level of, okay, your friends are my friends are your friends. And
What a
he's
blessing
missed.
to have him.
He's such an amazing man, and a huge loss for us.
So you mentioned him, and it just crossed my mind some other type of individuals that exist. You see them now in school as well, where financially well, emotionally broke. You know, and you see that combination as well. And so sometimes immediately our heart goes out to those who are, you know, financially struggling, but there's this whole other population that gets overlooked because, oh no, your family's doing well, but you're not.
No, I don't. I think we in education see that across the board.
Yeah.
There is no kid, there is no family, there is no one that isn't going through something.
Yeah.
And to me, the work is in building the relationships and building the resilience that it takes to get through whatever that is. It might be for kid A that they're going back to the motel because they don't have a home anymore.
Yeah.
You know, kid B might be going back into this mansion, for lack of a better term, where the parents don't ever talk to each other. They're just on their phones. You know, there's no modeling of a good relationship, you know. So everybody has something.
Yeah.
And that's the tough piece is we still, as educators and society in general, are judging things on a lot of stuff like, oh God, look at the car they just pulled up in, or whatever. You look at an address, you know, this is a South Side kid, this is a North Side, you know, where all those sort of things, and forget that the struggle's real for all of them.
Yeah.
You know, it's knowing what that struggle is and how do I help? How do I help as an educator? How do I get to making things better for you? And it's a tough gig. When you have 100, you know, for me, 4,000 kids, for you guys, 180 in the classroom.
We're gonna get to that, the 4,000. I don't know how you do that. Okay, so you graduate high school, and it seemed like some of that path was like, school is, no, I want to get to work. I want to make money. So how do you end up deciding on going to college?
So I did go straight to COS from high school, and I was working at my parents' pizza parlor at that time, and made it through COS, and you know, did the transfer. Didn't graduate from COS. I did a transfer to Fresno State, and I'm in my first semester at Fresno State, and this lady used to come into the restaurant, and I noticed, you know, she always had the little tie and her name tag, and it said Table Mountain Casino on it. And I started
Mountain.
Yeah, I started talking to her, and she's like, "Hey, you know, we're always looking for dealers. I can train you as a blackjack dealer." We make great money, and I go, "Well, that sounds fantastic," you know.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking I'm going to keep working at the restaurant, and meanwhile I'm going and learning how to deal, you know, Pai Gow and blackjack and Texas Hold'em, I'm learning it. Yeah.
Is the clap still happening?
Oh yeah. Well, it did. I don't know if it happens now. I believe it still does.
Do they, Jim?
Yeah.
The clap?
Yeah, they still do.
They still, yeah. It's to show you have no coins in your hand, or, you know, chips in your hand.
Yeah.
So she's training me. This is old school Table Mountain. Like, we were still in trailers when I started. They were building not even the now old casino. They were building it.
This is when you were at Fresno State.
Mm-hmm. That for one semester. Well, I start making money literally hand over fist. More money than any 21-year-old should ever be making. You know, I was 21, obviously. And I'm thinking, well, I'm never going to make this much as a teacher. I mean, it was a bad night if I made $100.
Wow.
Good nights were $500 to $1,000 a night in tips.
And this is the 90s?
This is 1996. 1995. This is 94, 95.
Moving well.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is fantastic. So, of course, I'm not working at the pizza parlor anymore. The first thing I do as a poor kid is get a brand new fancy car. You know, it's like all the things.
Make
cell
up for
phone.
all of it.
I had a freaking cell phone like an idiot.
The rig.
The rig, you know, like, because I needed that. But I progressed quickly. I was a dealer for less than a year, and then became a pit boss. As a pit boss, you're getting a percentage of everyone's tips. So I was
you climbed that ladder
really quick, and, you know, hard worker. I was willing to do things, and so you progress. And so I did that for a while, and you know, after some time, you realize, I mean, God, we were having a lot of fun. You know, when it was a bunch of young kids. We would leave our shift at 4 a.m. type of thing, go to the airport, jump on the 6 a.m. flight to Las Vegas.
No way.
Go gamble away all the tips that we made.
Wow.
Fly back and be back for our next shift.
I mean,
like, all the time.
And juggling college at the same time?
That's just it. I was making enough money, but screw this. I dropped out.
Okay.
So I didn't even finish that semester at Fresno State. I was out.
Wow.
And
Were you living at home still? Or?
no. I had an apartment
your own
and all that
spot
stuff. Yeah.
in Fresno?
I'd moved to Fresno. Yeah.
So this is, you're out on your own.
I'm living. I am living at this point, but not the best lifestyle. If I'm honest, it was a lot of partying, a lot of
Fast
fun,
life.
making all this money, but there's no money left at the end of the month. All of the things that you just don't do right. So I'm like, okay, I need to get my butt back in school. I need to get back to what I want to do. I have always wanted to be an educator. I knew my path, and so I decide that's what I'm going to do. So I put in my 2 weeks notice at the casino, and I'm now 3 days away from actually my last day, and that road, all the way up Friant Road.
Is that the one you used to take to work?
Yeah.
He used to work out at Sierra.
Okay, so Friant Road.
Yep.
And Friant Road's a lot better now, but at that time, I drove by accidents practically every day. That day was my turn. And so
Oh, no.
I had a really major car accident, and girl was passing on a blind curve, and we hit head on. And I don't remember any of it happening. I just remember when I woke up, I instantly assumed this was my fault because I know I drive too fast. I still do. I certainly then
Is this true,
driving
John?
too fast.
Does he drive pretty fast? In your experience,
He's
you
not
back
paying
that.
attention. So that part of it, the partying, falling asleep a lot of times, that all of the things,
Yeah.
just being in my mind a crappy person, I'm thinking, oh my God, I had to be the one who caused this. And I don't know how long I was out, long enough that there were, well, no, I shouldn't say that. When I woke up, this is an awful thing. The girl had been ejected, and she was outside of my window.
Oh.
And she, she was struggling, gasping for breath, and she passed. I watched her pass away.
Oh, what a traumatic.
So that coupled with, that's me. I did that. That's the only thing I could think of. And I was pinned in my car. I was stuck. There was my both legs were bent in the wrong direction, and all pinned in. And people started to arrive, and it was quite a while for paramedics to arrive because it's up there. And paramedics arrived. They she was covered at that point. They covered me because they had to start cutting into the vehicle and all of those things. And I was airlifted.
Jaws of life.
Oh yeah, all of it. They had to cut the top open to get me out and all
Wait,
that
is
stuff.
which car was this?
This was a Dodge Avenger.
Okay, different
yeah,
car.
Yeah. And they anyway airlifted me out, and it was there in talking to the paramedics that were on the flight, that they said this this is what people said happened, because apparently some people saw it happen. I don't know how, but the bottom line is this girl had completely passed a pickup and a horse trailer on a blind curve and just came straight at me. There was
Nowhere to go.
And I guess there's a little bit of relief, like, okay, it wasn't my fault, but it didn't help. It just all it did was sort of compound this. You're a crappy person. In my mind there was just, well, maybe I could have been more alert. Maybe all of the things, but there was a time in which that sheet was over me, and firefighters were doing all their thing, and I was just sobbing. I think you're in shock. I kept up a brave face, but at this point, we're like an hour in of them, doing
That
all this.
long?
A long time, from it happening to when I actually got on. It was like 45 minutes, type of deal. And that sheet's over me, and I'm, now just kind of doing the sobbing type of thing, and I just start making all these promises, like, just let me get through this.
Yeah.
Just, please let this poor girl live. In my mind, I'm still thinking, well, they're going to save her. They're going to do something. And just making all these promises to myself, to God, to anybody who would listen at that point, of let me get through this. I will be a better person. I will finish school. I will become the educator that I'm meant to be. all of the thing, all the promises that you make in that situation, and obviously I got through it.
So that was a transformative moment for you.
It was. I when I've spoken to people before, I always say that was wake up call number one for me.
Number one.
Number
there was
one.
More?
Oh, for sure. That was the smack in the face that I needed to live as the person that I was meant to be. I think because I didn't have any fun in high school. I wasn't the partier. I was, kind of the nerdy.
Yeah.
I think I was. Oh, now I'm this cool casino guy, and I have an apartment, and I can throw parties, and I can do all this stuff. I can be the cool person that I wasn't before.
Yeah.
But it was never really me, And so, anyway, I had a long recovery. I had braces on my legs and all that sort of thing, and was, fine
During that
by
time,
that fall. Mm-hmm.
when you weren't, physically not able to move, were you back home?
My parents wanted me to go home.
And you're like, no.
I went back to my apartment.
Oh, okay.
And at that point, I had moved back to Hanford. I was in an apartment in Hanford, and it was downtown. It was this amazing apartment, 3,800 square foot open loft, right in downtown Hanford. It was so cool. But man, those stairs! I was pretty much stuck up there because there was no way I was.
Where's that building at now?
It's
Is that Irvin?
It's Lacey and Irwin, kind of right there. It's where Main Street Hanford is downstairs. Yeah, it's that, that part up there.
That's cool.
Yeah. So living down there, and again, making all these promises, I'm going to go back to school, I'm going to do all this stuff. It was a pretty big accident. Of course, all my, everything went to collections, all of it, type of deal. I couldn't work. I couldn't do all this stuff. Hire an attorney. I ended up getting a pretty fat settlement, from the whole thing.
Get you out of the hole from medical expenses.
And you would think, well, I have this money, I have all this stuff.
Yeah.
Let's go back to school, pay for school. Instead, there's a for sale sign on the Bastille, which is right. I could see it from my apartment.
It is.
I'm like,
There it is.
And the landlord guy who lived downstairs, he had some connections. I knew they would never rent it. I think I was 25 or 26 at that time. I'm like, they're not going to rent it to me. He had some city connections. They obviously wanted to put, and we went in together. And instead of going back to school and being a good person, I opened a freaking bar, a bar and restaurant, and that be, that
the
next
entrepreneurial spirit,
but not in the right direction. I should have. Obviously, I came from the restaurant business to some degree with my dad.
Yeah.
I thought I knew what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't. I didn't know how to run that type of world. And the bar business it's as wearing as the casino business,
Go.
Oh, that and just, you see so many people. It's like, I'm losing my house today in the casino. I'm losing my house. I'm like, what are you doing here? I'm hoping to be able to pay the bill. I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's kind of wearing on your soul. And then you get into the bar business, and it's like night after night after night, you're just seeing people lose themselves, and that was kind of wearing on the soul. So, it was a 3-year lease. Those 3 years could not end fast enough. Like I had fun the first year, and then it was just awful. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be in that business. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. So the last year, I went back to school, and at that point, I went back to Chapman, which was in the building.
Can I get a round of applause for that? Okay, so I just want to pause for a second because I just thought about something when you mentioned the bar and people losing themselves. There was a beloved show, I want to say it's the 80s. You guys remember Cheers?
Yeah.
With Norm and all the... So I now think back at all those regulars and all that time they were spending in the bar. And now as a father and as a husband, as a family man, I'm thinking, who was left at home while Norm and what was the other guy next to him with the mustache? All these guys hanging out, right?
Cliff.
Every day they were there. That was their life.
Yeah.
What life were they leaving behind at home that never got addressed on the show?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a different perspective when you're an adult.
And when you're in it as your career and you're seeing that, it's not fun. It's not fun. You're just like, oh, this poor person, this,
That's their identity.
Or watching a spouse come in and drag them out, sort of thing. Or it's just,
even if the kids come.
Yeah, anyway, not the life for me to this day.
Yeah.
Now I'm 50, nobody wants to see me at a club, but but even like if we're going to go to a bar or something like that, I have such a low tolerance for the thumping of music or any of that sort of thing. I'm just like, I'm good. I'm good. Let's get out of here.
Does it kind of bring back the old memories, or just,
I think all of it. I think
just-
it does. I think it reminds me of a lot of things that it's just hard for me to have a good time in that situation. I'd much rather be at home or at a fundraiser or something like that where there's not that just
party?
it's kind of, I say depravity to somebody, but it's just it's that just dead end. I look at it as like, man, like I get it, for the younger crowd, that's the rite of passage sort of thing. But man, when you start being in your 50s and your 60s and you're still hanging out at the club or at the bar,
Yeah, you don't want to be the old guy at the club.
you don't.
So I just want to pause because, Jim, you have this beautiful setup that you provided for us, right? Our show producer, Jim, does so many things off camera that nobody gets to appreciate. So I just want to shout out to Jim right now for all the work he's put together.
No worries, man.
The
I
back,
love it.
It's really cool.
the
Creepy, but cool.
microphone, the lighting, all of this stuff. I mean,
Details, man.
it's
All
the details.
Yep.
So with that in mind, we want to honor Jim because Jim said, hey, we got to get some paranormal stuff going on. While you were the owner of the Bastille, which was a restaurant / bar, Ghost Hunters, the show, comes and approaches you guys, right?
Well, actually, Ghost Hunters approached me 2 years ago
Oh.
about my time that I was there in the 90s.
See. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So, it's known for being a bit of a creepy place.
Yeah.
It was, for those, listeners that don't know, it was the county sheriff's office and the jail. It was the county jail for clear into the late 60s,
So some souls have passed.
Absolutely. Documented people who have passed there,
Yeah.
And the infamous ghost is Mary. There's a big tower there. It's got a spiral staircase that goes up. It's like a watchtower type of thing. And the rumor, is that Mary's in that window because she hanged herself in that tower. Okay.
Wow.
There is no actual documentation that anyone ever hanged themselves in that tower. The deaths that happened on the jail side. But there
story.
were women in that jail.
Okay.
They were kind of kept separate in that upstairs area, but it was
How
the
big
only
is this
jail.
thing?
At one point they said they had 200 prisoners in there, and
It's that big.
it's really not that big. So I mean, they had to be sleeping on top of each other. There's a section that has some solitary cells. There's 4 solitary cells. We actually had booths in those. It was kind of, one was the wine cellar, and then the other 3 were booths.
Well, you're
But
talking about the brick building, correct? The brick
Yeah,
building?
downtown. Hanford.
Brick
Yeah.
in the front, it's all granite
Granite
in the back.
yeah.
Like 2 foot thick
yeah.
granite.
What is it now?
It's nothing now, unfortunately.
Oh.
It's
Museum? Nothing.
No, it has so many ADA issues that anyone who wants to go in and do something there, they're going to spend $1.5 million, $2 million just getting it compliant to be able to run as a business. And so it's a big ask, and and I get it. It's unfortunate when I went in, when Ghost Hunters, it was so weird. I'm at work and I get this email. Please contact us. We're from Ghost Hunters. I'm like, this is another one of the spam sort of things. I start reading through it, and I'm like, oh, like they have facts. They have, we understand you were at the Bastille in the time of the 90s. So I reach out, and they're like, yeah, we were coming in. We want to film a full-length episode. We'd like to interview you and anyone else that you think would be associated. So when I went back 2 years ago to do the filming, I was so upset with the condition of the building. They had removed the bar for purposes of trying to get it retrofitted. They've cut a lot of holes and things just to check stability and all that stuff. There were holes down all the way into the floor. So that part was kind of sad, but it was a cool experience. I can tell you personally, there were a lot of things that creeped me out there. Did I ever see a ghost? Did I ever, no. I had plenty of employees, in fact, some who just flat out quit and said, I'm not doing this, who swore, they'd come in for opening, and there was somebody up there. There was somebody up there staring down at me, sort of thing.
Oh, man.
And, so a lot of creepy things. One of the weirdest things was in that tower, my office was up in that tower, or on the third floor, but you had to.
So you had to
use
take the stairs every day.
You had to take the stairs every day,
Oh
which
my
was
God.
whatever, but it was up there. There were so many times that paperwork would come flying down those stairs, down onto the bar area. And I'm like, I don't understand. My office is in the back corner. What what did this? No, there was no window open. There's no draft. So that happened a lot. That was the creepiest thing that ever happened to me. But plenty of employees, literally employees started refusing. We're not opening or closing by ourselves. There will always be two people here.
Did you have any cameras?
No, not at that time.
Okay.
You really didn't. I can tell you the creepiest thing that had nothing to do with ghosts. When we first opened up, I kind of created this new hostess station, and I know I needed a phone there. I thought, I grew up in construction with my dad, and that's what I'm like, I can do this myself. So I opened up the crawl space. It's, loose dirt, so I've got this roll of plastic, and I'm kind of rolling out in front of me, and I'm elbowing over, and rolling out the plastic.
Impressive.
And I had already drilled the hole, on the one side and on the other, so I knew where the two holes were. All I had to do was fish a phone line, through it. I'm doing that, and I'm hearing this weird sound. I can't explain it, but something's not right down there. And I'd pause, I'd hear something like, the hell is that? Keep making my way through. Well, it's not till I grab that phone line and start pulling it, and then have to flip onto my back to push it up to the other hole, that every single well in the floor joists was like shimmering. And I look up, and it was all roaches. Like, we're talking like 2-inch roaches, and the shimmer, and that was the sound I was hearing was all that. And I freaking make my way out as fast as I can, drop the bomb in there.
Did you get any on you?
I didn't get any on me, but when we bombed it and kind of did the whole stuff, I have never seen so many bugs in my entire life. That entire courtyard in front was covered in dead roaches. It was disgusting. So that was my creepy story.
That is creepy.
But Ghost Hunters was there. They interviewed me for about 3 hours.
And did you meet the celebrity guest?
I didn't get to meet the celebrity because
He was on a different day.
I'm common folk, so he came the next day.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't allowed with any of the other people that were interviewing. They just stayed the night there. So it was I can't think of his name, but he was the kid who played. Rick Grimes' son on Walking Dead.
Walking Dead.
And I can't think of the character's name at this point, but he was the one who came in. It was a very cool experience. I had about a minute of actual footage on the final episode.
What would they ask you about?
They just experiences, and but it's all that sort of thing. They asked me to bring like 3 shirts. Like, these are things I don't think of from. You're obviously in the film type of world, so he gets it, but. I didn't know how any of this worked. They're like, well, bring 3 shirts. We're going to see which shirt looks best on camera. Don't wear any
details,
green in case there's any green screen stuff and all that stuff. And then he, right when they're about to film, they spray the smoke, and there's all of the things. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is happening. And then the questions were pretty basic, just about experiences and fears. And I don't think I went enough into the believer mode for them to want to feature me very much, because I'm like, spiritually I have a hard time with this stuff, but it was a very, very cool experience, a good episode, and the only comment I got as I posted is like, man, you look jacked in that. I think it was the point where I was working out a lot, and I look at it, I'm like, wow, the camera added pounds in the right spot.
That's cool. We're gonna put a link to that episode.
Cool.
In the description, so people can enjoy your Jack features there. So that's awesome. So then you leave that, you go back to Chapman.
Yep.
And now the mindset is education.
It is, and I progressed pretty quickly. I was taking, working through coursework really fast, and I actually got. I told you about my sub experience. My first one with kindergarten. I realized real quickly I'm not working with the little kids. And that same year, I ended up getting a long-term gig as in an English position, which is what I wanted to teach. Yeah. At Hanford High.
Your old high school.
My old high school. I'm like, oh, this is so cool.
Wait, let me ask you this, because Jim, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but one of my first subbing gigs was at Kings River Elementary in Kingsburg, where I was also a student. And the first thing I did was walk into the teacher's lounge for the first time. Do you recall any of those prohibited areas that you could now explore?
I don't recall going into the teacher's lounge there at Hanford High, if I'm honest. Well, I shouldn't say that. I did, because one of the teachers that I really did not like, I remember seeing him in the break room. Now, so I must have been in the break room, and I'm just like scowling at him, because to this day, I still had a problem with him. He did the one thing. I was terrible in math, and I remember finally being brave enough to ask like a clarifying question. He goes, "Well, duh."
Oh,
I was like, I'm done. I'm done with math.
Yeah.
Thank you for ruining math for me,
And we remember those teachers, unfortunately,
we do,
just like the great ones.
Absolutely. It stung so bad in that little moment. It's like, seems so innocent.
Yeah.
But I was so embarrassed in front of my friends and all that stuff, But I had a great experience as a sub. And in fact, my the superintendent that I replaced was in charge of HR at that time when I was subbing.
Wow.
And he comes in my room. He says, "Hey, I'm hearing great things from the department chair. The principal really loves you. We're going to have a position open. Why don't you apply for a position as an English teacher?" I'm like, "Awesome. I'm going to come to work in the school that I went to. I'm going to serve the student of the school that served me well," and all that stuff. Well, I don't even get an interview. In the end, I was like, "What?" I don't know what happened. In the meantime, come to find out, there was some other stuff happening. That position wasn't quite the position that they thought it was going to be. But at that same time, I'm like, I need a job. At this point, I need to work. I had already, the lease was up at the Bastille. Like, I wasn't there anymore. There was no income coming in. And I go to interview in Lemoore, and they hired me on the spot.
Lemoore.
Yeah.
I always thought you were from Lemoore.
Well, yeah, I worked there for 17 years, so.
Okay, here comes the phone. Here comes the Victor notes.
Oh, gosh.
It's time, because we're in Lemoore now. That's my area. So a little side note for those viewers out there who aren't familiar with the area. Kings County encompasses, 6 or 7 cities? And two neighboring cities are Hanford and Lemoore. And so I'm living in Lemoore. I've been there for 10 years now. And I don't know how Victor and I hadn't met earlier, because there's so many people we have in common. And so I want to pause for a second and get some of this background out here. So I spoke to 2 different individuals and said, "Hey, what's something I could ask Victor about that he would be impressed to go, wow, you did your research?" So the first person I called, she said, "Ask Victor about the little coffins on his desk at the Lemoore district office." Right? And he said, "You had these little boxes that looked like coffins?"
They did. So they were. I had a collection. I still have the collection of old school pencil boxes. So back in the day, think Little House on the Prairie, one room schoolhouse type of things. There was a pencil box on the desk, and it had little drawers, and a lot of them had, like, if you lift the lid, you pull the pin, then you can get the drawer and all that sort of thing. I would imagine that was Debbie Muro, because she was so creeped out by him. Like, she goes, "Why do you have these rat coffins?" I'm like, "Rat coffins."
Then the other question was, who was Paul Terry?
Oh.
And what role did he play in your life and career?
Wow. So
are you impressed yet?
I am. And Paul Terry's a great mentor to me. So I was hired by Bill Black, technically. He was the superintendent. But before I started my actual semester of teaching, Paul Terry had taken over as superintendent.
Okay.
And he had been, I don't remember if he had been assistant soup or soup at Lemoore Elementary before that. But, I'm coming in, I'm bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, I'm going to do all these great things, and he was scary as heck, because he's one of those guys that has a very, very odd sense of humor.
Really?
He can be laughing with you, and then all of a sudden just go completely stoic, and you're like,
I know those guys.
And I'm like, wait, are you mad at me now? Like, what did I say? And it's just his style and how he does things, and I'm sure it's intentional. And believe it or not, his sister was my English teacher in high school.
Oh, okay.
Diane
So
Cross.
there was a connection.
There was a connection there. Well, I had only been teaching 2 or 3 years when I started my doctoral program. And Paul had finished his doctorate at Fresno State. I was doing my
Just going for it, Victor.
I'm like, if I stop now, I will stop.
Go, Liz.
And And he was in my room all the time. People were like, "Why is the superintendent in your room?" Like, we were talking about some doctoral stuff.
Yeah.
He gave me some books on dissertations and gave me pointers. And I thought it was just normal. That I thought he kind of was in everybody's room. Come to find out, it wasn't. He didn't go to everyone's room.
Yeah. He saw something in you.
He did, and he actually gave me my first admin opportunity.
Wow.
He and Harry Sussman. I can't believe I remember it. So Harry Sussman was his assistant superintendent, and there was an opportunity for administrator/teacher at this new school. I'm like, so I'm going to be a full-time teacher and the administrator? Yeah. It's like, that sounds great. And I
Portuguese
did it.
way. Let's go. Double job.
I did it. And
What was this new school?
It was Lemoore Middle College High School.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
So after teaching for 6 years, I went out there, and I was only doing the split assignment for one semester, and I grew the program enough that they said, okay, let's hire an English teacher mid-semester, and then I was the full-time.
And you're off.
And I loved that school. I loved it.
Speaking of that school,
okay.
this is my next person. Someone said that was kind of Victor's baby.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he loved that place. He instilled some traditions, including the gravy bowl.
Oh gosh, yeah. So okay, so middle college.
Tanya Macias.
Okay, that makes sense. When I went out to middle college, I believe there were 25 students. And I set off to, okay, we have to create our identity. Let's do all of the things. We picked a mascot. We picked our colors.
What is the mascot?
It's a panther.
Oh, it's a panther.
Yeah,
okay.
blue and gold. So
Lemoore Middle College Panthers, blue and gold.
And so as numbers growing, we started hiring more teachers. I was able to finally hire a full-time PE teacher, and
So you were the very first administrator.
I was the second administrator. Sandy Lau and Jamie Rogers were at
Jamie Rogers?
Yeah, the two
Small
of
world.
them, they ran Jameson High School.
Okay.
And this was an offshoot of that. But I think everyone realized if it's an offshoot of continuation, but yet it's meant to be a college prep campus, those two things aren't going to jive. But it was so small, we couldn't have an administrator,
Yeah.
So in essence, Jamie ran that program, and I came in year 2.
Wow.
And I set off right off the bat. We got to grow this. We got to really create our identity as college prep. And we got to capacity, which was 240 students, really, really fast. To the point where I converted it to a charter school, with permission from the district, of course. We converted to a dependent charter, and really started recruiting. We had like close to 100 Hanford kids that were going.
They were coming over.
Yeah.
Wow. What was
and
the
that was a sense
marketing?
of pride in me at the time. Now that I'm the superintendent in Hanford, I don't like it so much. But it was honestly, we started building on. I guess the theme would be is this place is for you, and it became the oddest collection of misfits you could ever think of, in a totally safe space. And this one PE teacher is like, well, I want to start doing intramural sports. A lot of these kids aren't athletic, but some of them are, and let's do flag football. Let's do, volleyball. Let's do some things. And so we moved forward in that direction. But when I say misfits, there were something that happened at King's Christian, and there was a mass exodus of King's Christian kids.
Oh, okay.
So we had that. We had a large population of Jehovah's Witness kids. We had a large portion of of
The
Mormon kids, a lot of Mormon
spectrum.
families. And then a lot of kids we had kids who were transitioning. We had, kids who were out, kids that weren't fitting in on the traditional campuses, were looking for a place that was safe. And it really was a very, very safe space. And I'm like, when I look at the relationships that those kids built and teachers built with students and all that we were able to do with people you would never think would work.
Yeah.
It worked. We were so personal. We have MTS, the MTSS model now in our
Yes.
district. we started MTSS. It wasn't even called MTSS
Back then.
We were a small enough group of teachers. I think at the time we were 11, maybe 14 of us when the school was full capacity. We basically created like a Facebook, if you will. It was internal, where I said, look, this is how this is going to work. If I tell you that Rob's having parents, got in a fight last night or whatever the case may be, I'm going to post that in the morning, and I want all hands on deck for the rest of the day.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it became a thing, and then we would see, okay, Rob's been on the list 4 times this week. So then on Fridays when we would have our meetings, I would create the spreadsheet. Okay, this is what's happening with this person. What are we going to do about it? And then we would assign a mentor. We would assign different types of things, whatever support. And it didn't take long. Kids are starting to come in. It's like, are you guys talking about me? It's like, yeah, we're talking about you. Is it working? And it just became such a support system that kids to this day reach out. Like, was this an experiment? Like these are graduates now. Was this some weird experiment that you were doing? I'm like, no, it's just, to me, the perfect environment, and I love it now, trying to recreate that on a bigger scale with a lot more kids. It's doable. It was more intimate there. But you mentioned the Gravy Bowl. We started a staff versus students flag football.
I heard you were pretty good, is what I was told.
Oh God,
what was your position?
Cheerleader, I think. No, I did whatever they did. They would throw the ball. I was, whatever it was. None of us were good except for the coach. And it became a thing. So staff versus students, and it was always the day before Thanksgiving. And so it's like, what do we tie this to? Yeah. So I got this gravy boat, and it was had it mounted. Yeah. And that's what we called it. Became the Gravy Bowl. They're still going. They're still going. Day. I'm really proud of it. Yeah, I think it's a cool thing. Yeah, it's still a great space. I don't look at it as competition. I just want to create that environment here. Yeah. For all of our kids, that a kid who doesn't feel safe feels safe with us and doesn't feel like they have to escape. Great for Lemoore that program's there, but I want to make sure at Hanford we have that type of experience for kids.
To your credit, and I don't think anyone knows about this except maybe some of the secretaries at the district office. Jim, I don't know if you remember me talking about my concern with the suicide rate and mental health, but I remember arranging an appointment with you. Maybe it was like last summer or summer before, and I wanted to do this suicide prevention conference. So I come meet with you. Lo and behold, you had one in place, and I was like, wow. And you said something that may still be true to this day. You're like, you know what? We're really bad at sharing what we're doing, but I promise you we're doing a lot.
Right.
Is there anything that you can share right now that's happening that maybe the general population wouldn't know about, that would be something that would maybe assist in the mental health field? Or
Sure. I could tell you, as a district, we have grown so much on the student services side.
I see that. I feel that.
That's been huge. We have a psychologist on every campus. We have social workers on every campus. We have student specialists on every campus. Yeah. Upping just the regular guidance counselor capacity, as they've worked through to understand, I'm not just telling you which classes to take. I can help you in other ways too. Yes. So building all that, bringing MTSS in, having those discussions about kids, assigning supports, all of those back-end conversations. They don't happen with all the teachers like they did at middle college, but they certainly happen with the administrators. Yeah. And assigning mentors and getting all that support. Those are all things that we keep kind of close to our vest. It's yes, we want people to know. But by the same token, it's a little private. It's we don't necessarily want people to, if he's meeting with that person, it's because they have a problem.
I see. Yes.
So some of it is kept, strategically. A little strategically, close to it.
I could see that.
But we are sharing, as a district, you start seeing us do a lot of videos, a lot of different videos on what we offer.
Tear jerkers. Shout out to Remscape. Josh.
He's your podcast with him was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
I can talk to that guy for hours on end. Yeah. He is just the coolest guy. But he does a fantastic job with our videos and really getting the message out of, I'll think even just like CTE programs. Still hear so many people in the community, well, school would be great if you just had welding again. If you just did wood shop and kids learn things. I'm like, yeah, we've got that. We have
We
those
got
things.
throw it out
No,
there.
you don't. I heard that you don't. It's like, yeah, but we do. What we do, you
Okay,
know?
I'm gonna shout out to Victor real quick because this is what he does. I don't know if he talks to John about this because I'm sure you're his listening, person. But on social media, check this out. This is what Victor does. Somebody will put out this blanket statement about our district. Like, hey, we don't do this anymore. And then he'll just, respectfully speaking, we've had this program implemented since 2021, and then just throw facts. It's like the most polite slap I've ever seen. And I'm like go Victor, to have the courage to do that.
You gotta watch what you say on social media, man.
No, he does it very.
I
But he won't stay quiet, and that's what I admire. Because a lot of people will take the safe route and go, well, they're going to have their opinion. No, he'll go, hey, just always respectfully speaking.
Yeah.
We've had this implemented for, what was the one? Oh, there was one recently, Jim, that at Hanford High School, they were saying, well, the girls have not played a home game in their gymnasium this entire season, right? And immediately my knee-jerk reaction was, wow, these girls don't get any home games. And then Victor goes, respectfully speaking, the parents of Hanford High asked for air conditioning, and so we scheduled all the visiting games where we're away at the first part of the season so that they could have all their home games with an air-conditioned gymnasium. And sure enough, that's what happened.
Yeah.
And then there was a follow-up post. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're back in the gym and we got air conditioning. But he couldn't leave it alone. He was like,
well, I
like that.
It's one of those things. Of course, I work for my board, and I want to make sure I'm respectful of what the board wants.
Yeah.
And there have been times where I 100% have gone the wrong direction. I'm like, and gotten not necessarily negative, but a little too much slap and not so much facts.
Yeah.
And I told the board, I said, look. Part of what I believe is 100% within my responsibility as a superintendent is defending us as a district. So
Yeah.
if something is out there and it's misinformation, it's misstated, or whatever the case may be, if it's true, let's own it.
Yeah.
Let's say,
That's
get
fair.
it. I get that we're over budget, or I get that we're over time on this project.
Yeah.
And here are the reasons why. But if it's flat out misinformation, I'm going to correct it. I'm going to put the facts out there. And I try to do it in a respectful way. But of course, the poster sometimes, they just kind of made me look dumb.
And who better to hear it from is the superintendent compared to a staff member or somebody who gets it wrong. And
I think so. And if the heat's going to come, then I'm happy to take the heat. I don't ever want that to fall on someone else.
Yeah.
I don't want it to fall on the board. I don't want it to fall on other administrators. If it's on me, good. I got big shoulders. I can handle it. So.
And see, that's the thing that I immediately recognized about you. I work with a lot of, in my nonprofit world, different entities and organizations and leadership and politicians, right? And what I've learned through watching the way they move, it's a lot safer to just stay quiet, even when something needs to be addressed. Right. Because, if it's silence, then you can't attack it, you can't critique it, right? And that's where I have to admire this idea that, hey, I'm going to say something for better or for worse. And if I have to own it, then I own it. And if I can correct something, I'll correct it. But that's not the easy route.
No.
The easy route is to just stay quiet. And here's what I do want to say about you and the district. As a teacher in your district, right, there's a lot of references, right, to the district this and the district that. And some of it's positive, some of it's negative, some of it's just observation. But it just seems like when you're in that position, there's decisions being made by a group of people that individually, if you happen to be present, you have to own, even if it was a group decision. And you have to own it in a way where you're like, well, I didn't vote that way, but you know what I mean? Right. No, it's like, hey, that's what we said as a group, and we're going to go ahead and own that and take. What made you want to take on a position where you knew that this was part of the job?
I'm a bit of a problem solver at heart, kind of a puzzle guy. I like to fix things. Interestingly enough, I started, and you have that honeymoon, hey, local boy comes back type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
all the stuff, all the great news
Everyone
articles
I
and
heard,
everything.
yeah, was excited.
And that lasted about 8 months, and then
Reality set.
COVID.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, now I'm on level footing because there isn't a superintendent in the county or in the state that knows what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
We are all equal from a standpoint.
Yeah.
And as bad as COVID was, it was a blessing for me in that it forced, at that point, 22 administrators, to, okay, roll up our sleeves, get busy. We have to make this work. And
Oh, yeah, you were through COVID.
yeah, I didn't take a backseat at that point. I'm like, I know I'm the new guy, and I'm sitting in superintendent's meetings and they're talking. I'm like, we're not going to be quiet on this. We're going to lead on this.
And a controversial decision. Check
Yes.
this out, Jim. I think I even called you and told you this. I want to say we were one of the first districts to get back into the classroom.
You were?
Were we the first?
There were privates that went back, and there were some other
We were the
districts
first
that went-
publics.
We were the first public, and certainly in Kings County, and I believe Kings and Tulare County,
Yeah.
and Fresno County for that matter. Yeah,
Okay, so out of 3 counties,
Yeah.
we're the first to go back to work,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's feeling a certain way about it. Whether it was teachers, parents, the students themselves,
Yep.
the community as a whole.
Yep.
So that was a big call to make. What was behind that decision?
Well, 2 things. I pride myself on a couple of things. I work very collaboratively. I believe in shared leadership. So very, very rarely am I going to be the guy that said, no, we're doing this because that's how I see it.
Yeah.
I listen and go through. Now you know very well a big portion of the union did not want to come back.
Yeah.
They didn't feel it was safe
Too
to come back
early.
too soon. The other thing I take pride in, though, is we were literally the first staff and district in the state to get vaccinated.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so I pulled a lot of strings to make that happen.
I didn't realize that.
So we hosted those events.
Yeah.
Those vaccination events, and at the time, nobody was anti-vaccine because everyone just wanted this to be over. It's
Yes.
like, shoot me up with whatever. And so I worked with Adventist Health. And I said, I will give you our space. We will have our nursing students help you out. We will do everything. Here's the caveat. My staff gets vaccinated too. And they said, that's fair. Well, we jumped the gun a little bit. Like at the time we made that decision we were going to do it,
Yeah.
the state had not released the vaccine for educators. It was
Oh,
first responders,
Yes, I remember
type
that.
of thing.
Yeah.
And I kept looking at this little portion in those rules that basically said essential. I'm like, I don't think anything's more essential than having kids educate. Of course, there was more essential than that, but
Yeah.
it's getting kids back
Beyond the
and,
medical.
Yeah. And so I dug into that. Well, lo and behold, the rule did change for our first event, the day of our first event. So we didn't do anything. We didn't break any rules. Okay.
Yeah.
But man, I started getting calls from Fresno County soups, from Sacramento.
Really?
What did you do? What did you do? This isn't fair. I said, well, I hustled for my staff. You could have hustled too. I did what I needed to do for my staff because I know how important it is to get kids back. And Rob, you remember we had some tragic things happen during COVID. We had a good friend of mine from school. Her 2 kids were murdered during COVID. And
She was on this show a month ago.
yeah, and Estella's an amazing
know you guys
person.
were
I
friends.
can't even imagine her loss.
Yeah.
But I look at that, it's like, would it have been different if they were at school? Had they had that time and were in class, would that have been different? We had a Sierra Pacific suicide during that time.
Yes.
And to me, I'm like,
Both from my classroom.
I could not help but think, if they were here in their seats, would it have been different?
Yeah.
And so that was a big push for me. And yeah, we came back in the weird cohort model, and it was half school, half not school.
Yeah.
The kid. But I take a lot of pride in the fact that we came back. I took a lot of heat.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, oh my
But that's what I'm
gosh.
talking about. It's like,
Man,
this guy is a glutton for heat.
I had one of our staff members, and I'm fine with it. I saw it, but literally drew a picture of me leading a funeral procession of all the teachers, leading them to their grave.
I didn't
and I was
see
like,
that.
oh my gosh.
Okay, so here's my other question. Now, Jim, I don't make fun of him, but I kind of like always recognize Jim doesn't have this awkward bone in his body type thing where like those awkward moments, like he's fine with them, and I avoid them like the plague, right? But it seems like being in your position, it's like a daily thing, where sometimes colleagues, old friends, people you went to school with, you got to bring them in the office, and there's awkward conversations, and sometimes it's like you get these attacks, right? And I'm not built that way, but if somebody's attacking me, right? On Monday, we're not having drinks on Sunday, or the you know what I mean. But you kind of have built yourself to be able to move past these conflicts. How do you do that?
I don't take things personally.
Yeah, how?
I really don't. I can be really mad. Don't get me wrong. And I've lost my cool with parents before. I've lost my cool with some staff before. But rarely. But I always try to see things from their lens and understand, why are you coming in so hot right now? Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. Because
but that helps you to.
It does. I have a very different work ethic, than a lot of people. But and to some degree have an expectation of that work ethic, but I'm not going to ever, be mad at somebody because they're not going to as many events as I'm going to, or whatever the case may be, or I need to take a cool off week for my own mental health or something like that. I'm not the guy who's ever going to do that for myself. I can't imagine, but I try to put myself in their shoes of like, they must be going through hell right now if this is what they're asking for, and so I always try to see it through that lens. I try to de-escalate, whether it's meeting with staff or meeting with parents, and just try to come to a common understanding of, where are you coming from, and do you understand where I'm coming from? Do we get it? I work with Alan Blanchard quite a bit. He's your union president, and do we agree on everything? Of course, we don't agree on everything.
Yeah,
but 100% we can fight something out and go have a beer. It's not an issue.
I've literally had that conversation with him.
Yeah, and to me, that is the piece, building the relationships ahead. It's the same thing with kids you experience in the classroom.
Yeah.
And when I was a teacher, I did the same thing. Them seeing me at their choir performance or in the stands at a football game or whatever, it may seem like nothing. And to me, sure, it was a night that I didn't spend with my spouse, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But it pays dividends later. And it's the same thing now with parents, it's the same thing with staff. It's like, no, I'm on the front lines with you. I get it. We're able to have this conversation because we understand, because I'm there with you. What's hard for me, it's been hard for me as a superintendent, is I don't see levels. You know what I mean? Like, I can sit here with you and I don't see you as my employee. I don't see
Jim mentioned that.
I don't see a cafeteria employee as an employee. We are all colleagues. We are all, so for me, if it's at the end of the event and I start picking up trash or picking up chairs or putting things away, that's just the way, in my view, it's supposed to be, because I don't see myself any differently than you doing this.
That goes a long way.
What has been hard for me is to then look through the lens of that person. They see a level.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't know what to do with that. It's like, if he's picking stuff up, then I must not be doing my job right.
Oh,
or,
I see.
and I'm like, whoa, that's not what I mean. That has no.
Are you trying to show me up, Victor?
Yeah. Or if I'm, any of the things I'm trying to do, it's like, it has, and I wish people could see it that way.
What's
but
the intention?
Some of my mentors have said, you have to understand, there is built-in level, whether you think so or not.
Yeah.
And this kid that you just hired last month, he doesn't see you as a colleague. He sees you as something else. And I still don't quite get that, because I feel like I'm approachable. I try to be approachable. I try to always be on everyone's level and have conversations. And I'm being authentic when I say I don't see levels. I just don't. It's not what I grew up with. It's not what I'm used to. It's not what I ever want to be.
It was all hands on deck.
Yeah, you
growing up.
just make things happen. And so when we approach that conflict, I can de-escalate it because I think once I start talking to people, they have that understanding. Oh, he's not just BSing this. Like he believes what he's saying, and I do. And so you work through those things. You get to that point, and there's a lot of reward in getting back to. I'm not mad at you. We fought in this moment
Like a family.
but I'm not mad at you, you know? And I always did that with kids when I had to discipline kids. Whenever they came back from a suspension or whatever the case may be, I made a point, like, we're good now. Whatever happened, whatever that blow up was, it's over,
Genuinely.
Genuinely.
Over.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't have time to care about our fight last week,
Yeah. We've got to work together. We're going to figure it out.
And, I think as long as you're genuine and authentic in that, you're going to be successful in a leadership role. And
Yeah.
that's what I try to do.
I think you see it in good on good sports teams. You see it, and you see it in military groups where there's a fist fight on Monday, but then we fight together on Tuesday against a bigger battle.
Right.
And I've always had a hard time with that because I feel like I take things too personally, and I'm really working on that. Jim's taught me a lot just through his demeanor.
Just conflict.
Yeah, it's just
conflict.
Just conflict.
If you could ride through it and just understand people aren't built the same way, but like you said, we're all equal. We're all human beings. So yeah.
And I really admire that because, the old me, because I feel like I've evolved a little bit. It's like, how dare he say, right? Did you hear what he said? In that moment of anger? Oh, you know what I mean? And you forget it's a moment. And that's how he felt in that moment, but that's not his long-term view of you.
Yeah. We sometimes use the term sting, and I've used that as an analogy a lot of times. That when that wasp stings you, it hurts like hell. And it swells for a minute.
Yeah.
And then it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. You know what I mean?
You're right.
And so I look at that, other than I guess if you're allergic sort of thing, you're going to have a different reaction.
Yeah.
But that really is the thing. It does. It stings. It stings when somebody says something on social media. It stings when a teacher makes a comment or something like that. We were talking about the COVID thing. Of all of the things in COVID, I don't regret coming back fast. I don't regret any of those things. I think those were all the right decisions. I have one regret, and that was we were doing virtual board meetings. Admin wasn't virtual. We were there. I'm jump back to one thing. I think it's the funniest when I look at it. It's not a regret. It's just stupidity. When we heard, hey, we're going to probably have to close after Friday, because there's this virus out there and it's very, very contagious.
Friday
and
the
a lot
13th,
of people are getting
March
it.
2020.
And all of this stuff is happening. What did I do? I had a meeting of the minds in our little boardroom with every administrator.
Let's share some oxygen,
and the
shall we?
union and all that. And we sat there and we talked about, I'm glad we did it, but how dumb in hindsight, and a sort of thing.
Were you guys masked up?
We were not, because it was before any of that, honestly,
Let's all get together.
But my big regret during COVID was in that board meeting, public comment was virtual, and everyone's trying to figure out what we're going to do.
this.
Oh, it was bad, and parents are mad. Parents want their kids back, and or no masks or all the things that parents were upset about. Teachers were still virtual. They're all logging in because they want to hear, because this is when I'm going to talk about how we're going to come back.
Yeah.
And a public comment from a parent, they're saying their thing, and they're still on a hot mic, and they said, "Who was that bitch?"
I remember this.
And they were talking about one of our teachers.
I remember this.
And
yes.
part of me was just taken aback.
I didn't know who they were talking about at the moment.
I didn't know either.
Yeah.
I don't know that there was even an individual.
My whole reaction was, oh, the mic was on.
Yeah. And of all things, no, I was taken aback. We're kind of trained in board meetings. You don't respond to public comment.
Yeah.
You just, you listen, you say, we will address that, or we'll have it set up a meeting, or whatever the case may be. And that is my regret in that moment, that I didn't say that's inappropriate and our staff is doing the best they can do, because we were, And I left that at the end, and I know there was hurt feelings from teachers. Like, you let somebody call us, the collective we, a bitch, you know?
Yeah. We're not
and I'm like,
defended publicly in that moment.
yeah, and you know, of all the things I would take back, that's the one moment. That's really the one moment that I wish I would have been as defensive of our district and our people as I am now. You know, because I do go. You know, I am going to be on that defensive mode when somebody comes at us, and at that moment I didn't. So, you know, a little bit of a regret, but all in all, we did good things.
Yeah, and lesson learned, and we're human.
Yep.
We're human. That's what I have to remind myself at the end of every week. You know, when I reflect on the wins and the losses of the week. Oh, why did I? You know,
Oh, for sure.
That level of self-forgiveness. We're toughest on ourselves more than anyone
Big
else.
time. We always, I do it every time. I replay almost every day. And when it's a bad day, I'll replay it until 1 or 2 in the morning, just spinning up there like, why didn't you do this?
Yeah.
This is what it is. You know?
Well, man,
I've always had to readjust my checks and balances in class, especially dealing with kids, to make sure that my admin knows that I've done everything I need to have done appropriately, so that when the parents do get involved, I know I have ammo. I always call it ammo. So when the parents come after me with their self-defense mechanisms of why their kid is the way it is, you know, what's happening, why he failed or she failed or whatever, it's like, well, now let me show you why your kid is where they're at right now. Instead of just saying, oh, well, let me look into that. Let me look back, because then you just never get that confidence that the teachers think or that the parents think you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and then it's hard for your admin to defend you when you don't have that. So the connection I have with my admin is 100%, and making sure that my principal is understanding that I have everything where I need to be. Let's have that meeting now, because I know I have my ammo. You know, so but
And that work on the front end, you know, that's a really hard thing to teach young teachers as they're first coming in. It's like, I get it. I get you're tired. You're just trying to keep your head above water right now, understanding how this all works, you know. But that front end layer of, I'm going to have everything in line. I'm going to have my grade book up to date. I'm going to have all this. It helps you so much later in having, you know, when you're having discussions with parents or with your administrator, or whatever the case may be. It's like that front work, it really matters. When you're brand new, I don't think you know what the front work is.
No,
you know, we
don't.
have a great coaching staff in our district. We have 5 academic coaches that are helping teachers through that. But I think you almost have to have that experience. But heck, we have veteran teachers that don't heed that, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like you're constantly in defensive mode when a parent's yelling at you like, why haven't you graded that? I graded it. Well, it's not in the grade book. It's been a month. It's been 2 months. Why can't I see if my kid is failing?
Being proactive.
And you kind of look, it's like, well, I don't get why you would add that stress to yourself as a staff member for the sake of, but I needed that night. I needed this to not do this, or I needed these 2 weeks, you know, I needed some calm. It's like, but now you have chaos, you know? So there's always that layer of trying to work with people and have that understanding of the pre-work with parents, with kids, with all that stuff. Man, it helps. If you have relationships with those kids, you're not going to have the classroom issues.
Yeah.
You know, it just works.
I've mentioned this to Robert before, and one of my favorite days of the year is the welcome back to school, with the parents. You know, first week of school.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that day, because then that's where I talk to the parents and I let them know, like, hey, your kid could get fired in my class. And they're like, excuse me? You know, what does that mean? And I go, well, you know, if he says the bad word, and I teach the digital video, and if he relates or puts any bad language in his video, I would have been fired in my career, you know, in my previous career, that if I allowed that to happen. So your son or daughter who put the F word or whatever it is in the video, they got fired. Well, when do they get rehired? Well, the next grade, the next, you know, assignment. And so it's just kind of hard for them to swallow, but then they realize these are real life scenarios that I'm bringing into the classroom and so on. So, but it's been really fun, because a lot of kids, their parents come back and they say, man, you're like down to earth with these kids, and you have to be. You can't beat around the bush, or you can't tell them, you know, oh, it's okay, you know, the F word's fine this time, but, you know, and realistically, we just don't put that in there. Nope.
Right.
So it's straight up.
Yep.
No, being proactive. I haven't shared this with you because you're super busy. You may know or not know, but I re-engaged myself with one of our academic coaches because I'm now the lead teacher for our education academy. And, 21 years, you get comfortable.
Right.
You forget some of the nuts and bolts that really worked back when you first started. And so now I'm with Christina Seaman, and we try to meet about once a week. And she's taken this old dog and given me some new tricks. And it's been refreshing. It's been very humbling.
Right.
Because you're like, oh, I've been doing this for a while. I was like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that it really helps sometimes to just put your ego aside and go back to where you started and what worked in the beginning, and just take care of some of those essential things, like you said, keeping a grade book current, which would seem like,
Basic.
but you get you get
Yeah.
distracted, you start to prioritize other things and go, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's true. When I met with the new teachers this year, we had 20s.
Yeah, we had a
21,
big
22,
class. That was cool.
New teachers in the district. I go and I do my little thing, and I probably scare the crap out of them. But what I said was, we don't have any very high expectations that you're going to be great as a teacher right now. You're learning that. There's no expectation of perfection. I said, what I do expect is that you're coachable. I said, because we can forgive a year or two of mediocre teaching if you're trying.
Yeah.
If you're not listening to your coaches and you're not trying to get better, there's no forgiving that. You'll be gone. It just is what it is. And I think if we get complacent in our own ability, our own knowledge, that we think we know it all as veterans, that's dangerous.
It's a dangerous space.
And boring to some degree. I'm like, if I was always looking for the next, I still to this day am listening to different leaders, listening to different approaches and that sort of thing, in trying to, all right, what do I add in this year? What do I do this time? Some of it's for wanting to better myself as a leader, but a lot of it is just, I've done that way for the last 10 years. So I'm ready for something new, and so you have some hits, you have some misses as you try those things, but it's important. I think it's really important. I admire you for working with a coach. She's fantastic, and so are the other ones, as far as just seeing a different perspective.
I have to say though, privately, I've been talking to some friends. I'm like, I don't think I'm as good as I thought I was. You have those moments of doubt,
You are.
And I was like, oh man,
wouldn't have asked you to do what you're doing if you're not. So
thank you.
Yeah.
I guess we're going to end on this, because this has probably been my biggest question for you. I was doing nonprofit work in Tulare County before I attempted the same thing in Kings County. Mm-hmm. And not to say that any county is better than the other. We all have our, positives and negatives. But in Tulare County, I did this library project, and I felt like the doors were open, and yes, and we want to embrace him. We don't really know who he is, but he's trying to do something positive. Let's get on his team. And then I came to Kings County, and it felt different. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I felt was like, oh, wait a minute. Who are you? We need to know you first before we start to work with you. And I'm like, oh, I'm trying to do good things, and that should be enough. No, it's not quite enough. We're going to need to know you. And so it's been a much more gradual thing. It's like going over to two different friends' houses and was like, come on in, have dinner. And they was like, wait, who are you again?
Right.
And so I felt that. And then as I've learned more about Kings County, I would say that it would be fair to say it's a more conservative county to work in and address, and not say it's a good or bad thing. But when I think about your journey, mm-hmm. and I would think, would this have been a much easier journey for you in a different part of California or the world or state, and yet you stood here and did it all here in Kings County?
Right.
What kept you here? Because I know your spouse, your husband, John's from beautiful San Diego, mm-hmm. sunny San Diego, right? And relocated to this area, first Clovis, then Hanford. Mm-hmm. And so I'm assuming there was some part of you that said, hey, I want to work and build right here where I grew up. Right. What kept you here in Kings County?
Well, I'd like to think that I'm awesome enough that he would follow me anywhere.
There it is. Anywhere you go, Victor, I'm with you. Hey, Zorse, let's go.
Let's go. No, that the reality of that is my journey on that was long, because I was really not out the entire time I worked in Lemoore until my last year and a half there.
How old were you when you came out?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, to my family, it's 20 something years ago.
Yeah.
At work, at least in my head, I wasn't out until, gosh, it's been 6 years here, so 7, 8 years ago that
Okay.
I finally had the courage to say something at work.
Yeah.
And you know, I lived in that world of kind of being in and out. In the casino world, there was no being out. You know, not in my position. That was a very conservative type
Really?
of group.
Okay.
Get
Didn't
into
know
the
that.
restaurant business, you have a little more, you know, flexibility there. I met my first partner, and who became my spouse, had a daughter. All of those things at that time is when we met. So the entire time I was an educator in Lemoore, I had, you know, marriage wasn't allowed at that point, but I had a domestic partner. I had a daughter. All of the things that should be normal, I was keeping completely separate. And, you know, you'd let little things slip out. I would say my daughter sometimes in class, like, wait, you have a daughter, but you're not married. No, no, no. I'm like, well, you know, and I was just always very guarded. When I got the administrative position, I became even more guarded, and
Yeah.
I was so scared. I'm like, now I have no protections. I have no union protections. I have no nothing. What's going to happen if they find out that I'm gay? You know, all of this
Yeah.
stuff. Yet I mentioned that campus was so open. You know, it was, here I am trying to create this environment of acceptance, and we did, but I wasn't brave enough to do it. You know, I wasn't brave enough to put my toe in the water of like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm with you guys here. And to the point where I even moved to Clovis, you know, just because it was too hard to be in Save Mart and see a student and a parent walk up, and it's like, oh, there's these two guys with this little girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm like, oh, that's clear. You know, so we had little signals, like, you go this way, I go this way. Let's pretend we're not together. You know,
Oh,
just
wow.
awful things.
Yeah.
My daughter, unfortunately, was having to go through all of that. And, you know, no real sleepovers, no friends, you know, in this area.
Yeah.
We were having events, and I never took anyone. No one ever came with me to the Christmas party. I didn't
see.
bring my daughter to games. You know, it was just so detached and very, very wearing on. You know, I talk about things being wearing on the soul. That was wearing on the soul. You know.
Yeah.
And that, and a lot of other reasons, my marriage, you know, after 18 years being together, didn't work out and got separate. And it was really at that time that at work I said, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, you guys have to know what. And at that point, I was at the district office. I had left my principalship. I was as assistant superintendent, and the first person I told was Debbie Miro. She was my superintendent. We'd been friends for so long. We had traveled
She
together.
wasn't quite sure if she was the first. So you're
She was
confirming-
the first at work.
At work.
She was the first at work. What's so, you know, everyone that I told is like, well, duh. You know what I mean? They all knew. And we use, you know, I've used this term before, the cloak and the veil. You know, I thought I had this like cloak, like this invisibility cloak sort of thing. In reality, you just got this thin veil. Everyone's seeing right through you. Of course, you live with this man. You have these things. Like,
Yeah.
people get it. You know, I just, in my mind, I'm thinking, no, I'm hiding it. So Debbie was the first one, but Debbie we had gone to Paris on a group trip before with
Wow,
my
you guys are
ex
really close.
and my daughter. You know, I mean, like, she was
Yeah.
there all along the way, and so I told her, and then she literally grabs my hand and says, "All right, we're going to go talk to David." David was the other assistant superintendent, and I'm like, "Wait, like right now?" Because it was the guys that I was more nervous about.
Yeah.
You know, I know it sounds sexist, but it was that. And he's the same thing. Well, yeah, Victor, you know, I've been to your house. Nobody keeps their house that clean. You know, sort of just all the typical type of stereotypical things.
Yeah.
And so they all made it so comfortable and so easy. My secretary, I mean, they were just wonderful, you know, which made it even worse. It really made it worse for me, that I felt like I had betrayed all my best friends, you know, by not trusting them
Oh, I see.
with the truth.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about them. It really was about me. But I was already in a pretty negative space from my relationship ending. I'm not the biological dad, and I felt like I had lost my daughter because, you know, things got a little messy there for a little while, and I wasn't seeing her anymore. Not because of anything other than, you know, other dad, you know, that she belongs to you type of thing. And then that betrayal piece, and things went south for me, like really far south. I was in a super bad place. I wasn't happy at work. Even though now I was out and people were being kind to me, I just was like, this isn't it. And I literally started, not just thinking about, I like planned the end of my life.
Really?
Yeah. And
I think that makes a lot more sense to me now with your emphasis on mental health.
yeah. Yeah. And the thing is I still don't, even with all that was going on, like literally having a plan and dates and how and where and when and all of it, I still don't ever view myself as a person who has mental health issues, which is stupid, you know. Obviously, I did, and it's interesting, you know. Here I am, I you know, because of what I was going to do to myself, I didn't want to dishonor my family. I didn't want to dishonor my daughter. I didn't want any of those things. I really needed to make it look like an accident. I was hiking a lot. And I just kind of knew what I needed to do to make this just an accident during a hike. But there was a timeline to that to be able to make it work. And so I'm thinking I'm keeping this all quiet, but people at work started to kind of notice. And it was actually in Rotary. I was in the Lemoore Rotary Club for many, many years. A friend of mine comes up, he goes, Victor, whatever's going on with you, it's going to be fine, and it's going to go away. And I'm thinking, holy crap, like, how do you know? And it obviously showed. And and I go, I'm good. I'm good. But the whole time I'm sitting there during lunch going, what the heck, you know? And then I get back to my office, and he sends me a text message. He says, what are you doing right now? You know? And I said, well, I'm working. He goes, anything you can get out of? I go, well, I don't have any meetings. I'm just catching up on paperwork and stuff. He's like, come to my office. So I go out to see him, and he confides in me something personal he was going through, cancer stuff and things like that. He's like, nobody knows this. He goes, nobody but my wife knows this, you know. He goes, but I'm doing it, you know. Death is in my future, and I'm keeping on and doing all this stuff, and you can't too. And so I, you know, opened up to him, and he's like, oh my God, like, you're gay, like. That's small potatoes. Who really gives a crap? Like, that's fine. And anyway, again, that was that lead into that bit of light, you know. And I was just in such a dark place by myself. Just started to see that little bit, like, okay, you know, and started pushing myself through. And then I met this guy, you know, during that time, and I was doing AVID trainings down in San Diego. I used to be an AVID teacher and an AVID lead, and so I would go down and train people during summer, and met him at the gym while I was down there, and it was, God, that was July. I guess it was July, and my plan was for that fall. So, you know, it's good, and so wow. Then just another ray of light. And what I always like to say about John is he's very, very comfortable in his skin. And, you know, just, and I wasn't, clearly. Even though I had come out at work, he's like, no, there's no little bit out. Like, you're out. You know, I'm coming to games with you. I'm not going to be, you know, the side piece type of thing. You know, so I am going to be there. And oh, okay. So we hosted the Christmas party, you know, sort of thing. Yeah. And right about that time is when the Hanford job opened up, and I talked to Debbie. I said, Debbie, there's nothing I'd like more than to be my whole career here in Lemoore and be superintendent here. But you're not done, you know. And so this opportunity is here. I'm going to go for it. I mean, no disrespect, sort of thing. She's like, go for it. And I felt pretty good. I felt like, going into it and through the interview process, I'm like, wow, this might actually happen. And when I was offered the position, I said to the board president, I said, that's fantastic. I said, but hold your horses before. I said, you do know what you're getting, right? Like I need to know that you know what you're getting. And I had gone to high school with him. He was a friend. He goes,
Oh, really?
Yeah. He goes, yeah, we're good. And I go, the whole board. And he goes, yeah, we talked about it. And you know what? If they want to say anything, if they want to complain about it, we've got the best person for the job, so screw them. I said, okay, if I got your support, I got your support. So I came into Hanford, no secrets. This is who I am. He was there from day one. We started going to football games. We started going to, every kind of fundraiser you can imagine. He was there. I joined Hanford Rotary. He was there on day one. And it was hard for me. It was a very, you know what I mean? And it's still cower to something like, oh my God, there's 4,000 people at this football game and they're all looking. And after a while, I'm realizing nobody's looking at me.
Imaginary audience.
I don't sit there and pretend that everybody's okay with my lifestyle. I know that. I know it's not,
Yeah.
And people that I consider really good friends will sometimes, I'll see something on a different post on Facebook or something. I'm like, oof, that stings, The Source in Visalia just did their laser light thing where they shined a rainbow laser light into the sky to open up
I didn't hear about
Visalia
that.
Pride.
Yeah.
And Channel 24 did something on it. And, these are people that I consider friends, respect, and, they're writing things like, what the hell? Like, really, do we need this type of thing? It's like, what are those lights shining into the sky doing to you? You know what I mean? So if you feel that strongly that this is such a negative thing, then you must have feelings about me,
I see.
And so I put things back. I'm like, whatever. I'm not gonna let that affect our friendship, type of thing. But the reality is, and one of the reasons I think John is comfortable in this community and I'm comfortable in this community is we haven't had any backlash. I'm sure people have said things behind our back. I'm sure. But we feel nothing but supported. We're at events. He's there. We go to fundraisers. We're always together. And never, like literally not once has someone come after us on that. I've gotten some hate mail. I mean, there's, keyboard warrior type of stuff and mail that's, to the district office that's,
Oh, really?
Anonymous type of things. Like, we won't let you normalize this sin and all, type of things like that come in. I'm like, well, if you really meant it, you'd put your name on it, or you'd come tell me that it's not okay, And so I again try not to let those things bother me. But more importantly, I have a team of administrators and staff members that I feel welcomed with, obviously we have a lot of staff members in our district that are from the LGBTQ community, a ton. And it just kind of comes with academia. But more importantly, our students that are going through that sort of thing, I'm not the guy who was pretending as principal to be supportive of you when I wasn't even willing to live my truth,
I see.
I look at it now like I'm not going to be the guy who's waving a rainbow flag around. It's just not me. It's not who I am. That's not my level of advocacy. It's never going to be, for any kind of flag for that matter. To me, it's that I can be at that game with John and I can have those people watching, and that's okay. They can judge me however they want. But that kid that's in band or a cheerleader or whoever, or a football player that is seeing it and going, you know what? He's doing it. They're together. Maybe it's okay for me too. Maybe it stops one kid from having negative thoughts or thoughts of suicide or anything, that they are different. If I can do that for one kid, I will be at every game. And to me, that's the important piece. It's the important piece for me and John. It's why I feel like we have to be the face. I'm not trying to rub anything in anyone's face. I'm trying to just show, if you're a good human, you're a hard worker, you care about people, and you're willing to work and do good for your community, I'm going to make it really, really hard for you to not like me. That's my advocacy. I'm going to make it really, really hard for you to judge me on being gay. Judge me on other things. Judge me on leadership. Judge me on other stuff. But don't throw that as the reason why. Yeah. I'm going to let these things outweigh this. Not that there's anything wrong with this.
Yeah.
But we still live in a world where, unfortunately, people have negative opinions about it.
Wow. He said he was going to be an open book, folks. The book's open.
Yep.
Wow. Thank you so much for coming. We know that our studio is not down the street.
Oh,
and
I appreciate the
we
opportunity.
know Sundays matter a lot to people. We know you're a very busy person, so I want to thank you. I want to thank John for taking the time to be here with us today. Dr. Victor Rosa, the open book. Here he is, folks. Thank you so much for everything. Jim, thank you for the setting.
Of course. Thanks.
This is cool.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Appreciate every guys coming.
Very cool. RobLive, like and subscribe here on YouTube. Check us out. We're here to inspire. And as always, we end with love, peace, and chicken grease. We out.